Today we are running
the devil.
Welcome back to more SOVL PvP. Today we are putting this Team Double Devil Abyssal Legion list through its paces. Now for this video I thought I would talk very briefly about Abyssal Legion in general before fast forwarding through a few matches that I think really showcase the strengths and weaknesses of this particular list before going into my usual play-by-play of a couple of matches where I talk about all my decisions, and stay tuned till the end for matchup against Mr. Abyssal Legion himself, FilthyCasual.
Talk about must-see television.
Now let's talk about chaos in SOVL, because I feel like there's a couple of things that make this army unique. Firstly, they're the only faction in the game without a single ranged unit. They can, however, somewhat compensate for that by putting out a lot of speedy units. And I think the other interesting thing is all of the units fall into one of two categories. You've got your sort of classic Chaos Marauders, which are like cheap, but not that great. So like the Northmen Horse, and Hounds, but you can field a lot of them. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum, with your Chaos Warriors and your Chaos Demons, things like the Abyssal Warriors, Knights, and then all the Demon units, which can be really strong, but prohibitively expensive in some cases. And just to give you some perspective on how expensive these units are, there are currently 8 units in the game that start at a cost of 150 points. These are commander units. And 4 of them are in Abyssal Legion, and 2 of them are even battle line. And then there's only 1 unit in the game that starts higher than that, and that is the Abyssal Knights that start at a whopping 175 points. So it can be difficult to build lists around these, particularly when positioning and movement is so important in the game that sometimes you need volume of units in order to kind of play that game. But I have seen people make use of the Abyssal Knights and the Abyssal Warriors. However, typically, I think what you see from Abyssal is the Abyssal Champion accompanied by some combination of the kind of cheaper units. What I don't think I've ever seen in PvP is any of the demon units being played, which I think are just a little overcosted for what they bring right now. And I should mention at this point, if you want a kind of full breakdown of Abyssal Legion as a faction, I would check out the excellent army overview videos by FuzzyLogic, and I'll link to his channel in the description. But moving on to the list we're playing today, I mentioned that you see a lot of the Abyssal Champion typically on the Manticore, and there are lots of armies that can field one of these commanders on a flying mount. I think Griffins, Wyverns, things like that. I think the Abyssal Champion might be the best with, the Abyssal Armor and Demonic Possession. And these are just really great kind of guided torpedoes. The flying is really what gives these units their utility, and just to get in usually lowish volume of attacks, but really strong. So I thought, if one's good, why not run a second with the Archdevil, which is effectively what this is. And yes, it is a little overcosted. It's 150 points. Only 6 wounds makes it really fragile. But you get 6 attacks with Frenzy. Equipped with the Greatweapon, 6 power. If we do compare that to the Abyssal Champion, and right now I'm running it naked, that's with no weapons or items. And I'll mention why in a second, but this unit comes to 130 points. And it's somewhat comparable as it is. You get 1 fewer wounds. 1 fewer wounds, but 7 attacks, combining a Manticore and a Champion. Certainly, I think if you put an additional 20 points to make it equal, 20 points of items, things like True Strike, which is really good with Demonic Possession, I would take the Champion on a Manticore any day of the week over the Archdevil. However, I thought, yeah, just the ability to run 2 of these kind of units is going to be really interesting. So let's see how that plays out. If you did want to run this kind of double devil, as I'm calling it, a few different options. I really like 2 units of hounds. They're cheap. They're so fragile. They just get shot off. However, with 2 attacks, each, if they can get into combat, they can really punch above their weight. And then 2 units of Northmen brings it to exactly 500 points if you don't equip the Abyssal Champion. Another way I was kind of toying with building this was dropping one of the axe and then giving, the champion a Greatweapon, things like True Strike, stuff like that. How you classically see the Abyssal Champion kitted out, but decided to go with this just because I value the number of units. Having another unit of battle lines, sit on objectives, things like that, and provide screens as well. But yeah, with all that said, let's get into some matches and take a look at maybe some of the strengths and weaknesses of this particular build.
Thank you for allowing me into your living rooms once again.
So our first matchup here is against Greenskins, and they have a catapult, which I don't like seeing. Both the dogs and the devils are susceptible to shooting. But with the big blocks of units, and if we maybe just like pause it right here, they are susceptible to the mobility of this list. And so I'm able here to get a couple of nice flank charges on their big blocks of infantry. And if you see off to the left, the commanders are kind of facing off. And even though my opponent's commander is kitted out, the champion is actually better at base, so they're similar point costs as they stand, so it's a bit of a 50-50 there. And otherwise I'm just kind of able to collapse on these other slow moving units, use the relatively low number of high power attacks that this army can put out to get the job done, and yeah, we get lucky and win the kind of 50-50 off to the left. By contrast though, an army with a low number of high power attacks doesn't like to see big blocks of undead because of their crumble ability. You just don't have the volume of attacks to kind of grind through them. Now here I do choose to just face charge my commanding unit into theirs, really just trying to kind of snipe off their commander, because in addition to the unholy vigor that the necromancer comes with, my opponent here has kitted him out with Hex of Ruin and Reanimate. And that Reanimate, Hex of Ruin is just, I need that guy dead. So even though I haven't fully kitted out my commander, I am able over 2 rounds of combat to take them out. But I kind of made a mistake a turn or so back here, where I think maybe if I just left these blocks alone and run, maybe I could have won on points. There were no objectives in this particular scenario, but I was a little too close, got drawn in, a bit too bloodthirsty, and yeah, again, this sort of low number of attacks, just not able to grind out my opponent's units, particularly with the sort of very fragile dogs and the demon that you see here. And finally then, I mentioned that this list doesn't like shooting, and looking at my opponent's army here, this is just a miserable matchup, because not only did I have good shooting, but Fireball on the wizard can just one-shot a lot of my units, and then Hex of Ruin as well means that even when I do get into combat, like here, when half my army is already dead, the devil is going to go down here just to the attacks from the handgunners. Only 6 wounds, being really susceptible to Hex of Ruin here. So yeah, this one pretty miserable, although I'm sure I could have played it better, played positioning differently. A tough matchup nonetheless. But with that, let's get into our first proper matchup, and this one is going to be against Abyssal Legion, so a mirror match here. And knowing that Abyssal Legion don't have a single unit with shooting, I'm free to set up as far forward as possible, give myself most options. As we take a look at my opponent's list, they are running 3 units of 10 Northmen with axes, 2 units of Hounds, the Abyssal Chariot, and a champion who is equipped with 2 hand weapons and cruelty. So a little choppy. And to get into this one, yeah, one thing I did want to point out early on here is kind of nicely my opponent has positioned these units, kind of able to get them far up, but using the terrain really nicely, just not to offer up any possible flank charges while still getting up there. That's really nice. They did, however, I feel like left a little gap here. Right, Devil's going to be able to get round into the chariot. And I move, because my opponent has final turn, final move. I'm not sure where I can place my champion without it getting countered, but I realise if I put it here, I still get this charge on the Hounds. So I do that. My opponent elects then to do something similar. This is available to them, but both being a little bit patient there. And now, I don't know if my opponent did this intentionally or not. If they did, this is like next level play, but opponent offers this charge on the Hounds with this unit. I go to counter, obviously. We've got the same movement, but because of the terrain and this unit, it gives me the message I'm not able to fit in base contact. So I'm not able to counter. So my opponent's going to charge all the way down here, get their charge bonus from the power, and I'm not going to be able to get that myself. So not sure if that was just luck on my opponent's part or like next level skill. I was toying about whether to go over here. It offers the sort of flank next turn from my opponent. You want to deal with the dogs. I'm confident my champion can at least get rid of them, and it's just one unit dealt with. Even with the charge bonus, this is fairly even. I think this is fairly even. I'm not actually sure how this the math works out here, but I'm happy with this charge. And I'm happy with this matchup. It's just I'm kind of all in while my opponent now has some amount of flexibility. Indeed, it's a bit of a stalemate there. My opponent's chariot survives on 1 wound. Takes a bravery test, needs to roll a 3, rolls a 3. 1 wound left there. Actually didn't matter that my opponent got the charge bonus because I think actually with defense 3, power 4 or 5, actually it doesn't matter, so they were rolling the same. I was just annoyed about not being able to get that counter charge. Didn't actually make a difference, and we got luck on the 50-50. Talking of luck though, I'm able to chew through these. My opponent needs a 2-up and roll snake eyes with a 2-up, which is absolutely horrible, because if you look here, my opponent is obviously going to take the rear charge, and initially when I made this charge I didn't mind that because my champion will be able to attack back, but now this is like absolute worst case scenario because my champion and the Manticore are going to put all of their attacks into this one lonely Hound, while my opponent's champion hits me from behind. Not only that, Devil is caught up with this 1 wound left chariot, so it's not going to be able to come over and help. Frustrating. In hindsight, I think I didn't need to charge this second unit of Northmen axe. Maybe at the time I was thinking I really want to just deal with this unit, but actually sometimes it's best not to anyway, because here now I'm offering my opponent the opportunity to get a lot of attacks through and gives them a better chance to win on combat score, whereas if I just left it of just this flanking unit attacking, I'd have my 10 attacks, they'd only have 1 or 2, and this unit would then be freed up this turn to kind of go after this unit or move up to help here. So little mistake in hindsight there. Thankfully here my champion is able to survive the attacks from my opponent's champion, although with only 1 wound left. Did we see it already? Maybe I missed it, but this chariot at the top here. Yeah, I must have zoomed past it while talking about this. The freaking chariot at the top survives another round on 1 wound. Absolute disaster. I said in the last game, in my last video, even, that I don't like complaining about dice. But yeah, just needed a few more things to go right in this game. Although, having said that, then my Manticore is on 1 wound left. My opponent's not able to get it done, and then this time they've rolled an 8 on a 6-up break test, and I'm able to make my opponent's champion flee. So, as I said last video, all comes out in the wash. But this one is getting close here now, and again, slightly unfortunate. My Devil's just not able to get into like the flank of like any of these units. And I was looking at this, and normally you wouldn't want 3 Northmen going into a Manticore, but it's just got 1 wound, and I was hoping my opponent didn't go for this. They've obviously got the rear charge here. But yeah, they do. The 3 brave Northmen against the big beast. Got another rear charger there. And here I think was maybe a mistake, I'm not sure, because my first inclination was like, oh, well, you know, I want to move my Devil up here, charge my opponent's champion. But then I thought, well, actually, you've got to always think about how the battlefield will look when it comes to make those charges, and I'm expecting this unit to run. Good chance this unit's going to die, and if my Devil was up here, they would just be able to countercharge that. So instead, move around here to kind of do something here. But now in hindsight, again, I'm kind of going back, because maybe I think there was an opportunity to get it just in here. You know, maybe if I'd done a good job judging actually what the charge range of this unit was, I would still have room. Maybe that would have been better. Again, just kind of minor things. Because, yeah, here as we see, my opponent gets 1 attack through from the 3 Northmen, roll 1 3 up, and I fail it. So my champion goes down, and the rest of my units are running. What's more is, I think at this point we either have, I think we're even on 50 points on 1 objective in the middle. If I didn't mention that before, there's 1 objective here, and my opponent's going to claim it here, although not just yet, because my 2 Northmen succeed in their break test, which normally be a good thing, but it's actually a bad thing here, because my Devil then is not able to charge this unit. These 2 Northmen are definitely going to get taken out in this final turn. I'm not able to take this charge. Devil's not going to do anything for the rest of the game. And if you didn't know, flying units are not able to claim objectives. So my opponent's going to get an additional 50 points at the end of this one when, those 2 go down. My opponent's champion able to take care of this last remaining unit of Northmen. So as we take a look at the scores, it is a win for my opponent. Really close one, well played, but I just needed a couple of those things to go our way.
It wasn't supposed to turn out this way.
Finally, as promised then, is a matchup against FilthyCasual, who is really one of the best SOVL players out there, frequently on the top 10 list, recent runner-up in the SOVL Showdown tournament, and really known for playing Abyssal Legion, led by his Abyssal champion, Homelander.
Okay, Ashley, that's enough. Let's not bring the room down.
Now, here I really wish SOVL Replay did show objectives, because they're going to play a big part in this one, but there's one closer to my opponent on this side and one closer to me on this side. I've got battle line unit to come and claim this one, but Hounds looking to potentially contest the one closer to my opponent, and they have thought similarly with a speedy unit looking to contest my one on this side early. Once again, I know not to expect any shooting from my opponents, so I don't have to bother deploying with any screens. Indeed, my opponent threatens the charge here. I threaten the flank charge on these units, so they respond by moving their hounds close. And here I have a bit of a choice because I do want to deal with this. I want to keep, this objective if I can. And I have the all-important final move in this first round, which I think is especially strong when you have flying units. But that does mean my opponent will get first pick of charges. And I have the option here to move my devil into the charge cone of the chariot here, and that would allow me to intercept the chariot when they go for this charge, because I'll be closer, or stay outside, which is what I just tried to do, which if my opponent doesn't choose this charge first, will allow me to then get in and take the combat with the chariot while the chariot doesn't have any of the charge bonuses for the crushing charge and hand weapon. Let's go for this option, which does leave this unit a little bit vulnerable here, but let's see how that shakes out. My opponent then, with their final move, just moves the champion Homelander over here, again threatening this charge on the dogs, which would be a good matchup for them. But here's a situation though where, because my hounds are threatening the flank charge here, my opponent, yes, has first charge, but actually has two. There are two situations where they're going to want to select first, because I'm not sure if this is closer. So if my opponent goes here, I can then get this preferable flank charge with immunity. My opponent goes here first, I can get this charge, which will be preferable for me in immunity. Then moving Homeland around here also kind of frees up my champion. I decide to kind of double down, expecting this, then double down. I feel like with the flank here, this will easily be able to chew through the dogs and then continue on his merry way. However, my opponent does choose to take this charge first. So I get the preferable matchup here, and then I elect not to take the charge, even though I have this flank charge here. I feel like sometimes when you're playing quickly, or if you're new or something, it's just you take the charges just when you get them. This is a good flank charge, yeah, why wouldn't you take it? But now I want this freed up to kind of continue moving around. I position my devil so that I have the rear charge on the chariot, but also kind of facing this way. That really forces Homelander over to deal with it. And they are able to position outside of my charge cone. However, I don't really mind. One of the benefits of single model units is that you don't really mind getting flank charged, particularly in this situation, because opponent has defense 5 on the Manticore, power 6. The Greatweapon will take it to power 7. There's no difference to the number I'm rolling, whether I get the charge or not. So my opponent goes into the flank. The only real benefit that they're getting is the +1 to combat score for being in my flank, which with Discipline 10 and Fearless, I don't really care about. So yeah, it's kind of, I feel like you're conditioned when playing this game to always want to get the charges, get into the opponent's flanks, but yeah, there are certain situations where it actually doesn't really matter. And Homelander going this way frees my champion up to come around and defend this unit of hounds from the rear charge here. So getting into combat, 50-50 here, and it's pretty even. We lose the combat here, I think by 1, but thankfully my Northmen don't run. But kind of as expected, 5 hounds in the flank are able to make those other hounds run. And that combat goes about as you expect. I believe that doesn't, my Northmen, well, I suppose after the charge, the chariot's not doing much, but being able to survive here is pretty big. However, you may have noticed that this chariot is now contesting over here, and for all the movement over here, I haven't been able to get into the objective on this side. So I mention it now, but this is becoming a bit of a worry here because my opponent is ticking up objective points from controlling more than me and getting those 50 points a turn. So even though things are looking pretty good on the combat front, as we're able to rout this unit of axes, I'm a little bit worried about the score. I believe, yeah, my opponent does get the better of this combat, but, well, I think it was even in terms of wounds, but they win on combat score, but yet 10 discipline with fearless means they survive. And now I'm expecting this is surely going to be mutually assured destruction with the units being on 2 and 1 wound respectively. But I move my champion over to help out over here. Again, I feel like sometimes it's like I had this charge, but particularly when a unit is fleeing, you really don't have to take it that turn, because if they rally, then they're still going to be stuck in that position. My dogs are now in a position to charge that unit. And finally, my axemen run from the Abyssal Chariot. And yeah, as expected, they're mutually assured destruction. But we now get into the closing phases, and it's looking good again for me in terms of combat score. But I think my opponent now either is or is certainly going to be 250 points ahead just from having those objectives tick over. So even though we're able to clear up there and we're able to get into the rear of the chariot here, and I don't think I have killed enough in order to beat my opponent. So if that makes sense. So the goal now is I need to completely table them. I need to completely wipe out everything, because if any of their units survive, my opponent's going to win on points. If you didn't know, if your army gets completely wiped out, then yeah, you lose the game regardless, whether or not you had more points than your opponent. Not able to take care of the chariot, and they do not run, so they turn with 1 wound left and no more charge bonuses. So this is really coming down to the wire in this final round of combat. Am I able to take out my opponent's remaining units? Really nice roll from the dogs there, kind of compensating from these bad rolls, but able to take them out. But here we roll 1 hit. However, on the 3-up, my opponent does not survive. And with that one single roll at the end, deciding it, final roll pretty much, my opponent's last roll of the match, we are able to take this one. And as we take a look at the scores, yes, there is confirmation that had one of my opponent's units survived at the end, they would have won on points. As it stands, we come away with the victory. I'm sure I have lost to FilthyCasual's Abyssal lists far more times than I've won, but so happy to take that one.
I will say that the battle rages on.
But let me know what you think of this list. Is it the new meta, this team Double Devil, or is its weakness to shooting in particular too much of a deal breaker? If you've made it this far in the video, like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and let me know what you think of these. Let me know if you like the shorter sped up games, if you like me to slow down and take my time explaining everything. And until next time, bye.